Previously on the Heroes Forge podcast.
People love to jerk off with one hand and point with the other.
Yes!
Let's go into some rougher times, and I don't know if it's rougher feelings because I knew of the story from the outside, but I want to get the story from your inside. I remembered we were bound to have a fitness and body positivity panel. It was 2021, I believe it was. It was a late C2 2021. And you weren't able to go because you actually had a spinal surgery. Tell me a little bit about what happened. Whatever you're comfortable telling us about that story. Tell us a little about the recovery process from there, because obviously you're back and better than ever.
Yeah, so this kind of started around the time I started pole dancing. I started to notice I was having chronic lower back pain. And I thought I was getting older. I thought maybe it was because of pole dance, and because I'm tall, I'm 5'10", it was easy for me to kind of make sense. You know, there's not a lot of abdominal muscle. There's a lot of like open space between my rib cage and my hip bones. So, you know, I was like, it made sense to me. The pain kept getting worse and worse and worse. I was doing everything, TENS machine, Epsom salts, physical therapy. I was still training and doing shows and trying to compete as best I can, but it was really starting to get impacted by this back pain I was having. And this back pain was now turning into like lower flank pain, and it was like going through my stomach, and it was getting worse and worse. And then pandemic hit, and I started living with my partner who I live with now, and he noticed like, you're not sleeping through the night. And I said, yeah, I can't sleep. I get really bad throbbing back pain at random times. And then that essentially escalated until 2021, where I was bedridden because I was in so much pain. I was throwing up all the time because I was in so much pain. I lost 30 pounds in 2 months because I was so sick and I was in so much pain I couldn't eat anything and I wasn't moving. And I was going to doctor after doctor after doctor. I got misdiagnosed. A lot of doctors told me I had depression. They gave me a bunch of Klonopin and sent me on my way. I had a doctor tell me when I was hospitalized for 5 days because I kept going to the ER and I just couldn't stop vomiting. And I was in the hospital for 5 days. They couldn't find anything. They did like an endoscopy because I was vomiting so much. They thought maybe it might be gastro related. And he was like, oh, we don't find anything. Everything's perfectly healthy. And I said, I'm still in so much pain. I can't get out of bed. He laughed and said, well, it looks like we need to check you into a convalescent home.
Oh, what?
Yeah, like an old folks home.
Oh, what?
I know.
The fuck?
I know. I really experienced firsthand the way that the medical industry can treat women. And I'm a white woman. And it's 10 times worse for Black women and women of color, 110% in the medical world. But eventually, I finally did get diagnosed with what's called a schwannoma. And that is a nerve sheath tumor. And mine grew in the nerve sheath of my spinal cord.
Oh, ouch, Charlie. Actually,
yeah, it was...
Yeah, I gotta adjust my light. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. That was a good stopping spot.
No, it's okay. The reason why I do that because it's dimming down in my apartment a little bit. The sun is setting. We've been talking that much, so I have to adjust a little bit.
I have a giant ring light.
I have a spotlight right here, but the thing is, when I turn it on, it just goes bang, and I'm like,
yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh,
lightsaber.
Oh, he's the star.
But go. Once you got diagnosed with that, what's a TLDR for someone who doesn't know what that is, and what was done about it?
So I got diagnosed via MRI. I had previous MRIs, but my tumor was actually in my T10 and my T11. So that's my thoracic spine.
That's low.
So it's right where my bra sits. It's like the best way to
thoracic.
describe it.
I'm sorry, not lumbar. Yeah. Thoracic. I'm sorry. It's in the middle.
But my pain was presenting in my lumbar, so my low back. So they were MRIing my low back and they weren't finding anything. Well, that's because the tumor was up a little higher. And that's what's tricky about nerve pain, I learned, is that it presents in weird places.
Okay, so let's throw the medical industry under the bus. I was an intern at a physical therapy office, and the one thing I learned is that the symptom site is not always the cause site. And a lot of times physical therapists, without MRI or without anything, what they'll do is they'll do treatment in the symptom site, but they'll also treat above and below it because they're not sure where it is. More times than not, cause site's up here. More times than they'll treat above and below just in case, but a lot of times they'll treat above because like over half the time the cause is above the symptom, especially when it comes to spinal and torso based, especially spinal based things, because the nerves in your body run like this, like wishbone, like downward wishbones. So we're feeling something maybe cause up top. I'm not a doctor. Like I said, I was an intern as a physical therapist, but that's one thing they taught us. I'm surprised the spinal doctors didn't think of that. Like, oh, she's hurting here. Why don't we go up a bit?
Well, I didn't see a neurologist because that's the scary thing about misdiagnoses, is that I didn't realize that it was neurological, but I was having neurological symptoms and I didn't realize it. I was falling a lot. I thought it was because I was bedridden and couldn't get out of bed. I started to have a lot of numbness down my legs, and I couldn't feel temperatures on my feet. And I was just so sick, I just didn't even think about it. And so before I got diagnosed, I was misdiagnosed with depression, all that. So I was seeing a pain management therapist. But she said, you are in more physical pain than people I ever see. And I am 100% convinced that there's something medically wrong with you. And I think you should go see a neurologist. But even then, it took me 2 months to get into a neurologist on a wait list. So that's 2 months and my tumor is just growing. And I was just laying in pain, vomiting constantly. I was literally like, if I couldn't turn my neck, I couldn't, like, I would have pain days so bad that I couldn't speak because the compression of my diaphragm, now I know, it would activate the nerves that was sitting on my tumor. And to answer the way I got diagnosed was pretty kind of fucked up. So I went to a mall. My MRI suite was in a mall, and which was fine. It was like part of the hospital system. It was like no big deal. It was just funny. And I so rarely could get out of bed, but sometimes I could. That's the thing about chronic illness, is that sometimes you're okay and you're semi-functional. Most of the time you're not, but there are little pockets where you're...
Fuck, isn't it?
It's random as fuck. And so I was up, and this was right when Spider-Man No Way Home came out. And my partner was like, let's go see Spider-Man No Way Home. Like, let's go out. And I was like, yeah. So, and at this time, I couldn't walk on my own. I was holding on to him for assistance and and I went to this MRI. I was like, they're not going to find anything. This has been like my 5th MRI. I had gotten so many tested. Like, I was being tested constantly for years, like in and out of doctor's offices. No one could find out what was wrong with me. So I was just like, this is just another test. So we see Spider-Man No Way Home, life-changing, love that movie, greatest movie. We get out, I have 2 missed calls from my neurologist. And I was like, uh-oh.
This is good news and or bad news.
I was like, that's not good. Because usually you'll get your test results over the app.
Yeah.
So I did get the test results over the app. While I was sitting on the toilet, scrolling on my phone, it was like, oh, your test results for your MRI have been posted, and it said mass found. Ooh. And it said schwannoma, and I knew that oma means tumor. And I was like, oh my God, I have a tumor in my spine. And I literally had the feeling of am I going to die? Because I don't know what that means. Does it mean cancer? Does it mean, what does that mean? And I'm only reading a notification on my fucking phone, man. But.
And your WebMD was just going.
Yeah, my WebMD was like, you have a tumor. And I was like, WebMD's full of shit all the time.
Oh, so they finally found it.
So they found it. I literally got it. This was on a Friday. By that Monday, I was meeting with a neurosurgeon. And by the next Wednesday, I had surgery scheduled. So for those of you who haven't been involved in the hospital system, that is an insane amount of time for a surgery. My dad had open heart surgery. His surgery was booked 3 months out. Yeah. But because of the size of my tumor and, I literally was starting to be not able to feel my legs. And I didn't realize that. I couldn't walk on my own. I was in constant pain. But I was so fucking happy that I got diagnosed with a tumor, because I had been treated like I was crazy by medical professionals for years. And after, of course, I did learn with my neurologist or my neurosurgeon that it's most likely a schwannoma, most likely benign. They went into it being very confident that it was benign. So I was like, okay. And, I'm just like, okay, sure, whatever you say. But I was in so much pain at this point that I had been told before I needed surgery. They thought I had, I needed a lumbar fusion. I had saw a different neurosurgeon years ago. And so when that happened, I was so scared. I was trembling at the thought of having to get spine surgery. But by this time, 2021, I was like, fucking slice and dice, baby. I'm so over this.
Yes. It can't get worse.
Oh my God.
It can only get just as sucky or better. Let's go.
Yeah. I was non-functional. Yeah. And with spine surgery and with a tumor going within the sheath of my spinal cord, there was a very real risk of paralysis, permanent paralysis. And I said, fuck it. A wheelchair life is so much better than the life I am living now. Let's do it. And we did it.
And you did it. And then
it got worse.
Then it got worse before it got better. Let's go.
Surgery went great. I had a great team. I remember my anesthesiologist. I remember also, keep in mind, this was the peak of another COVID surge.
Yeah.
I was completely alone in the hospital. My partner wheeled me in for my emergency neurosurgery like I was our cat that we left at the vet. And he was like, okay, bye.
Oh, no.
And I was like, see you later. And my initial prognosis was in the hospital for 5 days. And I was like, oh, okay. And they were like, just take off enough time. So I took off a month off of work to like recover, whatever. Surgery went great. My team was great. I remember, when you're waiting to get wheeled into surgery, people tell you good luck. And it's very unnerving because you're like, I've got nothing to do with this. I just need to show up. And it was so surreal because they were tacking all these like neurotransmitter like trackers onto my legs to make, that was how they tested. They initially gave you like little shocks, like a TENS machine.
Yeah. And
it was just to test your nerve response to make sure that your nerves in your legs was still working. Yeah. And I was like, this is insane. So I was disassociating hard.
Yes.
Because they were like, how are you feeling? And I was like, fine, I guess. I like didn't know. I was just so like, I'm here, I guess, and I'm doing it. And I had one of my techs, she was like, they give you drugs to calm you down before you go into the OR, which I was so thankful from. She was like, I love giving people this drug. It's like a little margarita in a bottle. And she did. And it was like, it hit me. And I was like, oh, hell yeah, brother. Let's get this fucking spinal surgery on the road. Like, it felt really nice. And they like rolled me into the OR. And I like, it was like, it was so many people. Like, it was just like all this stuff at like 9:00 on a Tuesday. I had I forget there wasn't a resident in my surgery because of the size and placement of my tumor. So I had two like, the fullest of a doctor you can be, whatever that title is.
You got the seniority in the house.
Like, yeah, I had two like head neurosurgeons. Surgery was 4 hours. I woke up and I was like, how'd it go? And they were like, it went great. We got everything. We're going to send it to the lab to test it. You did great. All of that. And I said, hooray. Oh yeah, but before they put me under, I was like laughing. And they were like, oh, are you okay? Like, are you getting like rolled into the room jitters? And I was like, no, I just can't believe y'all are here for little old me. Like, there's so many people in that operating room. It was crazy. But so I wake up and I immediately felt great. I was not in pain. I was laying on the gurney while they were putting the mask over me to put me under. And I was like twitching because it hurt to lay on my back so bad. I couldn't lay flat on my back. And I remember them asking like, oh my God, are we hurting you? And I was like, couldn't communicate because the drugs were kicking in. I like couldn't communicate. Like, it's just the tumor. It's not you. And then I was out. But I woke up and they came in, they tap in my legs. Everything feels good. Everything feels good. I remember I went to my surgeon and he was a very serious man. I kept trying to like get him to bond with me and he was just so serious and professional. And I was like, was it the biggest tumor you ever saw with finger guns? And he goes, well, no. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, no time for jokes here. So I felt great. And so the rest of the days are haze. I'm in like my post-surgical, I've got like a catheter in and all that shit. Very uncomfortable. And I go to sleep that night. And I wake up and I can't feel my legs. And I was like, okay. Oh shit. So I don't remember if I called the nurse or what happened. I do remember and I was on prednisone, which is a very intense steroid. Yeah. And I was on a bunch of painkillers. I hadn't really had a solid meal in a long time. You know how it is. I was post-op. I was fucking nutty. Yeah. It was awesome. Minus the not feeling my legs part, but man, I was high as a kite and that was kind of great. But I do remember the nurse saying like, oh, your heart rate is 151.
What?
So I was freaking out because I was freaking out.
Oh,
okay. I was trying. Yeah, because I couldn't feel my legs, so I woke up and I was like,
it was a freak out spike. Okay.
It was a freak out spike, and I was like, oh my God, I can't. But like, it doesn't feel like how you think it'll feel based on like movies or media. I could feel light touches, but I didn't have what was called proprioception. So I didn't know where my legs were in space. And I remember asking the nurse, am I moving my feet? And she said, yes, you are. And I was like, okay, well, that's good. That means I'm not paralyzed because I can move my feet. As I've learned, lots of paraplegics have partial movement and partial sensation. It is less common to have a complete and total paralysis. So that's why you'll kind of see some paraplegics or even quadriplegics, like they're able to walk with a walker.
Yeah.
So that was crazy. So they got me into another MRI that morning. So that's crazy. They got me into another MRI that morning, and they checked my spinal column. It was totally clear. They got it all out. Everything looked good. They came and talked to me, and they were like, this is kind of what happens sometimes. They didn't tell me that, and I'm kind of glad they didn't tell me that because I think it would have freaked me out more. But they were like, your body has adapted to having this mass in your spinal column for so long that your body adapts around it. So I would lose sensation, but then my body would make adjustments. So now that space is filling up. And with the trauma from surgery, like I had internal stitches because they didn't cut into my spinal cord, but they did cut into the dura mater to get the tumor out. And when they took the tumor out, my whole spinal cord shifted over. Yeah.
Then that's.
I also had what's called a laminectomy. So you know how like you have your dino spikes in your back? Mm-hmm. They removed two of mine to get to my tumor. So I have like a little divot in my back now, which is kind of cool. But I like my scar. I think it's badass. I think it's like a testament to what I've survived, sir. So it doesn't, I like to show it off. I'm like, you know what? I like the scar because it shows where they cut that fucking tumor out. So I like it. But everything was good. And I was told like, you know what? This can happen. It did happen and it will get better, but nerves heal very slowly. And you're going to need to go to an inpatient facility. So during COVID, I then went to an inpatient facility for 3 weeks and I was just in the hospital for 25 days and it was COVID and I couldn't see anybody. But so that was really hard. Yeah, that was really hard. Like none of my family could visit me. There was like the hospital had a strict no visitors policy. I did go to a hospital my friend worked at though, and this was like my mom friend who like did my laundry. She like went grocery shopping for me. She would like help push my meds through, you know. But I when I was in my inpatient, that was like I had to relearn how to stand up and I had to relearn how to walk, and you got to get that shit started right away. So I was like not feeling my legs, and they're getting you up out of that bed, and I still have like some tenderness from my surgery. So I was getting like nerve zaps from my incision down my legs. So that was like a hurdle to overcome too.
All the while your nerves are literally trying to rewire themselves like a fucking circuit board. Like, oh, that's got connected to that. That's got connected to that.
Yeah, it was so. And what sucks about when you're in the hospital with like a spinal cord injury or spinal cord, like your recovery surgery, no one wants to be the one to tell you you will walk again. No one wants to be the one to tell you you won't walk again. My prognosis was really good. But, I'm not going to say I didn't have bad days in the hospital because I couldn't feel my fucking legs. It was really scary. But I will say I was so much more functional than I was in a wheelchair than when I had had the tumor and couldn't get out of bed. Because I couldn't even put my shoes on. I couldn't bend over and put my shoes on. Now I can get my shoes on. It takes me 35 minutes and I have to snake my floppy little ankle in a shoe, but I can fucking do it.
Would you say like your worst day post-surgery beat your best day before it? At the peak of the tumor's fucked upness, would your worst day after op be considered a little bit better?
I would say my worst day before surgery was the worst day ever. I think being in pain was worse than being paralyzed 110%. I said I think, but I know for a fucking fact. We love to write off chronic pain patients, and it's so hard to express when you're in pain, the way that it affects your life and how much it takes from you when you are sick and chronically ill. I missed my best friend's wedding. I missed so much. I had to stop doing everything I loved because I couldn't fucking function. Like I lost so much weight. I was like a shell of a person, and it was the worst. Being with the tumor, I will absolutely take paralysis 110% over being in pain any day of the week. Being in pain is no fucking joke. No. I feel so lucky because I got to wake up from surgery with no pain. So many chronic pain patients do not get that. And sometimes surgery will make their pain worse. Yeah. And it's just, my heart goes out to them. Like, the recovery was hard, but it was so worth it to just not be in pain anymore constantly. And going back to pole dance, like, I was just accustomed being a dancer who had chronic pain. I was just living with that. And after my surgery, and then, once I was back up on my feet again, I could dance for the first time without back pain. Do you know how fucking awesome that was?
Yes. Well, tell me a little bit about that. Like, let the time frame from the time you recovered out of the hospital to the time you attempted pole again. How long was that? And what were some of those first days back on the pole like?
So let's see. My surgery was in January. So when I left the hospital, I still couldn't walk. They want to get you to a point where you're ambulatory, so you can be somewhat self-sufficient. I'm very lucky. I live with a partner who's like capable of carrying me over one shoulder, so that helped a lot because we got him into the hospital to do like a family training so he could learn how to assist me out of my wheelchair, how to help me upstairs, and he could get used to how I moved. And all my nurses and my therapists were like, "Oh, you're gonna be just fine." When they saw him walk in, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're not worried about you." So I got discharged February 5th. So I was in the hospital from surgery to February was 25 days. And then I immediately went to inpatient. Oh, I'm so sorry. And then I went into outpatient. And then I was an outpatient from February until July of that year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I started pole dancing in May.
Okay.
So when I started pole dancing, I could. The good thing about pole dancing is that I could hold on with my arms. Because I was walking with a cane and I still didn't have full sensation back in my legs.
Wow.
When I started pole dancing again.
Come again?
I got cleared by my physical therapist. She said I could try. But yeah, I remember after I like crouched on my knees, I just sat on my knees and I was like, ah, because it just hurt so bad because I hadn't put my legs in that position in so long. But yeah, so when I got to dance again for the first time, it was just like, because that was my goal. They always were like, what's your goal? What do you want to get out of therapy? I was like, I want to be able to dance again. That's my goal. And I would show people what I did because I think a lot of people can relate to this. I was just at my peak physical fitness in 2019 before the pandemic hit. And I was showing my therapist, I was like, I used to be able to do this. And they would be like, oh my God. I would show them. I do doubles performances with my best friend and where we do tricks together, partner tricks and partner pole dance. And I was showing them that primarily because that's like such show shopping. Like some of the proudest work I've done is in my doubles. And they were like screaming, we gotta get you back up that pole.
Yes.
And they did. And
yes.
it was great because I was able to ease myself back into it by holding on. And it helped me too, because in my recovery, when you're training consistently, you're going to have days where your body just can't meet you because your muscles are fatigued and you don't realize it.
Yeah.
So I would have days when I was trying to walk again where I would just not be able to, like, I just couldn't get I would have clonus, which is like involuntary tremors from like nerve injuries. And I would just have it activating and like shaking and like I just couldn't walk. And I was like, I'm so tired. And it allowed me to have patience for myself.
Yeah.
Because I know that it's going to be up and down. Training days are up and down. Recovery days are up and down.
Yes.
My partner and I have a joke that like recovery is nonlinear and stupid because there's so many ups and downs. And when you train all the time, you're going to have days where you just can't get that rep that you've gotten a million times before. And you don't feel soreness. You're like, everything feels normal, but your body's like, please just rest me, please. Just rest. So I had a lot of patience for myself in the recovery. Not all the time. I did cry a lot. My patient notes were like, patient is weepy again tonight. And I was like, I'm having a rough time.
Just bear with me.
They have to document it. They have to document it for like psych evals and stuff. I totally understand. But yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it was like a relatively quick turnaround. But again, to clarify, not everyone with a spinal cord injury is going to walk again, and not everyone has the goal of walking again.
Yeah.
And because you're not walking doesn't mean you're not healed. There's still a lot of recovery behind the scenes that you probably can't see or that you as like an able-bodied person might not be able to see. But that doesn't mean that they didn't work hard enough or they didn't do PT enough. It doesn't mean anything like that. I got lucky. My spinal cord itself was never actually damaged, just crushed.
Gotcha.
So it was able to span out. So none of my nerves, the communication was interrupted, but nothing was permanently damaged.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And I think that's why I was able to kind of have a quick comeback. I got very, very lucky. And I'm like very grateful for like my nurses and my doctors and my surgeons who just like really, I mean, they really did a good job in that surgery.
Yes. My imagination just instantly shot to Chicago highway traffic of like, oh, the traffic flow was just cut down to one lane. So they had to clear out. And will construction be a pain in the ass for a little while? Yes. But once 4 or 5 lanes are opened up, you ready to go.
That's a perfect analogy. Yeah, it's exactly that because your nerves are it's electrical energy being fed down your lower limbs. And, you know, it would start in my incision. I would just slowly just get more mobility and it would just kind of be a slow burn. I still do have some neuropathy in my feet and I do have a numb spot because my tumor ultimately had 2 nerves going through it.
Gotcha.
And they just amputate that nerve, which I was like, that's fucking fine. They hurt. Like you can take them out. So I have like a dead spot on, but nothing that like impedes my day to day. Like you would look at me now and you would never think I had any type of like neurological damage or spine surgery.
I agree. This is why you were like key in this is why not only were you one of the first but most important people I want to talk about, because I know a couple pole cosplayers, but I never with a story like this. Never with a rise story, with a fall story, and a rise even higher story.
It's like, so dramatic, isn't it?
George Lucas in his prime couldn't even write this shit. So
I will say too, I mean, Batgirl Barbara Gordon is one of my favorite characters. I think I love her more than even Wonder Woman.
Yep.
And I have a deep love for Wonder Woman, but like this experience and like I reread so many Batgirl comics in my recovery too, and it just like solidified like my love and my reverence for that character. Yes. You know, especially like Gail Simone did a great job in the New 52 Batgirl reboot of like having like the survivor's guilt of, well, why am I able to walk again and no one else, and like why did I get to have this and all of that. And she did a really good job. Like you can tell like Gail Simone like interviewed like disabled people for when she was writing Batgirl, and I love it even more. But I just wanted to throw another little geeky tidbit in there.
That's the thing. I love it's like at this point I think everyone kind of took the Alan Moore story for granted, and thing is call it 80s misogyny. Because, like, back in the 80s, the comic book gods in the 80s were Frank Miller and Alan Moore. Because they love these grim, dark, super edgelord bullshit stories. And the whole sheer fact that, like, Batgirl had a full paralysis be canon was... It was a direction to take it, sure.
Killing Joke is so dark and memorable for a reason. They went there.
But, like, you know, having a story of, like, no, a person can come back from that, despite the fact that not everyone does come back from that. And having the story of survivor's guilt of, wow, I did overcome this. People can, but they'll sometimes feel guilty for the people who don't, because that's also a possibility. That is a fascinating story that people don't even think about. They're just like, oh, they just wanted to write Batgirl back. It's whatever. It's New 52, blah, blah, blah. They kind of, because of how the New 52 in the grand scheme of things was probably not structured as soundly as it could have, which gives it a bad rap. There were still terrific stories within New 52.
Yes.
That as you could tell during Rebirth, they kept.
Yeah.
Such as Batgirl's recovery.
Yeah, and I remember there was kind of a lot of people in the disabled community that were a little upset because it's like, well, now you have this really interesting disabled character who is an integral part of the Batverse, but now you're making her able-bodied again. And a lot of people felt very hurt because it's like, why do we have to make it like she needs to overcome this? Why can't she just accept and be happy with who she is? But I think that's also what's so beautiful about Barbara is that we can have Oracle storytelling and we can keep it and we can keep her story as Oracle, or we can explore like a recovery arc with Batgirl and coming back to Batgirl. I think we can have both those things. And I do understand the criticism of letting Barbara like have her injury healed because for a multitude of reasons, and it is ableist and it does kind of discredit like how a lot of disabled people feel and wheelchair users feel.
Sure. At the same time,
but I love that character.
Well, yeah, and maybe I'll counter argue against it. Knowing the writing style Alan Moore had in the day, I don't think creating an empowered disabled person was what he had in mind. He literally paralyzed her.
No, he was like, I want to shoot a woman.
Yeah, he wanted edgelord shock
he wanted
value.
Gore and
yeah,
he wanted gore and shock value, and boy howdy, he got it.
Yeah, he got it. And
he got it.
Yeah, I definitely get the ableism in the recovery, but like I think disabling her literally had the point of just misogyny. Shock value misogyny of its day.
We can have a disabled character that doesn't become disabled through trauma. I think we can absolutely have that. Yeah. Many of disabled people have lived their whole lives that way, and they live totally fulfilling, normal lives. And I think it would be more interesting to explore a story arc of a character who's lived their whole life that way. And we celebrate that. And we don't act like it's this taboo, scary thing that no one wants to think about. Because
exactly.
Disabled people are valid and deserve a fucking seat at the table, man.
Exactly. And they don't need to be at that seat because of a traumatic event. We don't need a barber. We don't need a roadie. I don't want to throw roadie under the bus for being being disabled through Civil War. Like, what if
they did that?
Oh God,
interesting, because that character, you forget that he has like a spinal cord injury, because they kind of really never addressed it. They just, again, they used it for trauma and shock value, but then they never really addressed it again. Yeah, I know Secret Wars, they probably I saw a spoiler about Secret Wars.
I didn't see Secret Wars yet, but I can tell.
I didn't even say something, but I was like, I think I saw about him in Secret Wars, and I just,
but
I love Phase 1. I love Phase 1 a lot, and I love other things coming out, but too much homework sometimes.
Well, that's a problem, and I know we're going tangent again, but like with MCU, phases all the way up till 3 had a big arc, and you love the arc. It's been difficult for us to accept the ability to like and dislike the pieces of the subsequent phases, because there isn't a giant all-inclusive phase. I don't think they were intending to do that. So we're in a world where we can like She-Hulk and can like Moon Knight and not like Miss Marvel. Sorry, I'm just using myself as an example.
Yes. You don't need to. I agree.
And I think we gave Marvel too much pressure to be like, make another 3 phases of overarchingness. And I'm like, I don't think Marvel was ready for it.
They set the bar so high.
Yeah, they set the bar so high. You're not going to reach the bar again.
It's already been done.
It's already been done.
We'll never get the high we got from Endgame ever again. I'm forever chasing that high I got seeing Endgame for the first time.
Exactly. And you know what? It's like, and Disney wants the money that came with it, but they don't have the capability of storytelling that way to make lightning strike twice. Because there was no... You can't recreate the first Avengers. You can't recreate Endgame. You can't recreate even Iron Man. You are in a new world.
Spider-Man No Way Home, the way that they did that big reveal in Spider-Man No Way... We'll never get that again. They tried it in the Flash movie with Keaton, and it's just, you're like, we've already seen it.
Nope. Like Spider-Verse didn't even try. They're like, okay, we're gonna do it this way. You're gonna see a little clip of the MCU movies and the glimpses here and there. But
I haven't seen Spider-Verse yet. I'm so behind.
Well, no spoiler, but it's not a major spoiler. But you'll see glimpses of MCU in there as SETI.
I did think I saw that. But they've always kind of done that. They've been really good at always in some capacity connecting everything.
Yes, exactly. And that's just kind of their branding, and that allows me to segue.
Ooh, look at you.
I'm doing my best here. I'm still breaking fourth wall like Deadpool just to keep myself sane. But before we get into your podcast, I want to ask you, now that we encompassed your story of your cosplay journey and how the con scene was going, back then compared to now, going into your journey of sexiness through pole, taking it back from the grips from a disability and a tumor. Coming back as Nora Jane now, face to face with a crazy emo nerd that moonlights as a catboy sometimes. What would you consider your personal brand of sexy badass? Right? How would you describe it? And we'll start with that, because it's a two-part question, but we'll start with that. How would you describe Nora Jane, sexy badass now?
So I show a lot more abs, and that makes me feel pretty good about myself. So I like doing that. I am a big advocate for dressing slutty and taking hot photos of yourself and sharing it on the internet, because I think that is such a form of self-care. But no, it's what's interesting too is that my movement style changed after my surgery. Before my surgery, I was very into heel work and low flow. I would always strap on my boots. I would always slide around the floor, and that was like my favorite type of movement. After surgery, my feet felt really weird, and I had very poor ankle stability in my 8-foot heels. And I just was like, nope. So I transitioned to spin pole a lot more because spin pole is kind of more holding on, and I was able to take some of that burden out of my legs. So now I found this new sexiness where I just love feeling like powerful, but also kind of ethereal. Like I love to kind of put on like some like Chet Baker or some like old like piano riff and just float around on the pole and just even if I'm just sitting and like using my hands to just paint a picture, like there's something about that that like feels very like Arwen or Galadriel, that
Yes.
like soft sexiness, that ethereal sexiness. That's what I feel like. I don't feel like I am that person in my regular day life because who I am is a chaotic little gremlin. But like on pole, I like to exude just a little bit more like etherealness. That just like feeling beautiful and sexy and strong and like light and airy, I guess, is kind of my new how I've been post-op, which is different than pre-op.
Give me 2
Okay.
seconds. I'm going to turn my backlight on because now it's just getting too dark.
Man, we've been chatting for a while. I'm sorry.
I guess it's a good time to drop the sponsor, Heroes Forge Coaching. We have our online coaching programs ready for the back to school. In fact, our group training program right now is Homecoming, UA versus Xavier. Relive your favorite superheroes from My Hero Academia and the X-Men in workout form to get you in awesome shape going towards Halloween. If you want something a little bit more intense, we are still under the beta testing of our Spy Fan Bootcamp program, which combines stuff from Black Widow with the Mission Impossible and Jason Bourne series, maybe a touch of Spy Family anime manga, but if you need something more personalized, we have one-on-one online training slots still open. We have 5, I believe. So if you are looking to get in awesome shape post summer, going into the holiday season, feeling great, go ahead and hit me up. The link is in the description below. And I believe by now, other me got a light going. So yeah, back to the episode. I was getting too dark. I was like, ooh, I'm a bat now. You're talking about being a druidic area
Again,
goddess. I am being the devil.
I have a ring light. I have it. This ring light I have is like this big.
I can imagine. Is it just right over, like behind your camera?
Yeah. Or it's like my partner uses it because they're an actor and they
Yeah.
self-tape and all that. And so it's just like up there for them to use.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm gonna steal it. And it's humongous. And but look at how like angelic I look. My skin looks so flawless. It's not.
Don't make me
It's the
start
ring light
simping.
magic.
We're streaming, and I could cut the simping out of post, but don't make me start simping now. I'm gonna be like, hi, Laura,
Hey.
you're pretty.
Thank you, friend.
Yes. But with that said, okay, that's awesome. Going into that second part of it, what would you say to encourage a fellow geek in their self-discovery of their inner sexy and or inner badass? Like, what would be some words of encouragement for them to self-discover that?
I think the biggest advice I can give is it's gonna feel a little awkward at first because it always does when you're stepping out of your comfort zone a little bit. And push through that. Push through the awkwardness and don't doubt yourself and don't limit yourself because I think comparison and doubt is like such a thief of joy that do this for you. Do this to take care of yourself, to treat yourself, to give self-care and self-love to yourself first and foremost. And that will shine through in your performances. And just push through that first awkwardness because trying anything new for the first time fucking sucks. But when you get over that hump and you get through, there's just a whole world of possibilities on the other side of that. And so much for you to discover about yourself and so much self-love that it's so worth the journey. And it's worth just a little bit of awkwardness at first.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but those types of words, it sounds like it sounds very modality agnostic, meaning like whatever vehicle they use to find their sexiness. It seems like that piece of advice applies, like not just
Yeah.
whole.
Yes.
I've done martial arts all my life, so going back, and I got back into kickboxing a couple months ago with a job. I got it. My primary job is actually remote, so now I took a part-time job teaching kickboxing again. I'm like, oh, I found myself again.
Yeah. Yeah, and sexiness and sexuality looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
It's not like one textbook black and white thing. There's so much gray area and niche, and being sexy doesn't necessarily mean like exposing skin or like showing ass. It does for me, but that's okay if it's not for you. That's a part of your boundaries, and a boundary is important and healthy to establish. And sometimes you might just feel your sexiest, in like yoga pants and a cute top. Or I have a friend, their name is Dalton.pr, and they did a performance where they did like a sexy performance in like pajamas.
Oh, wow.
To show that sexuality comes from within, and it can look in so many different ways, and whatever that is for you, just like bite into that and just like keep going with it and find yourself through it. I think it's really important.
Full disclosure, it feels like sometimes I'm still self-discovering. There was a lot of, I think during COVID, it was a lot of reinvention that's still going on with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I let go
rough
of
time.
It was a rough time. And I let go of a lot of people that held on to a certain standard of masculinity or whatever they thought masculinity was with me. I had some people DM me like, hey, yo, why are you still doing that costume bullshit? Grow up, bruh. And things like that. And thing is, they saw me back in the days when I was kind of a dude, bro. I was too nerdy to be a fuckboy, but I was going that route. And the capability to go, and I'm a Gemini, so schizophrenia and diversity is kind of in my blood. But I'll tell you this, versions of sexiness always varied. Like, I remember flirting with somebody I was just friends with benefits with for a time being, and they had mommy vibes, and I had a way of flirting that was like, you don't know when the switch is going to be pulled, but for now, sorry, mommy. So going from simp, and then there was times I felt at my most sexy of, I had a set of dress pants on with a button-up shirt, and it was just like a button or two buttons. I was somewhat fully clothed, but then we had a vampire theme of it, so I had like a fang finger knuckle ring and some blood coming down my hands, and I just had a mean mug stare of like, no, you will be mine. And I was shooting with my partner at the time as well, and same shoot.
I love that.
Same shoot. We turned the tables. I laid on my back. She had a stiletto. Was it stiletto? It was a high heel, but the back of the heel, the spine of the high heel was a literal spine that went into my mouth. That I went like, my tongue like that. So the switch energy in me was just going nuts.
Yeah.
Self-discovery is so crazy like that. Like, I can't define it. To this day, I still can't define my sexuality yet.
Well, because it's always changing. The rules are always changing. The contract is always changing. And that's like what's so awesome. We get to change the rules and shift the goalposts for what serves us now in this moment.
Yeah.
We have control over it. And I love that story because it just goes to show it's like feeling sexy. And that's also why I love cosplay too, because I feel powerful. And when I feel powerful, I feel sexy and confident. And like when I feel confident, it's so great. And like I just feel like I can be such a full version of myself. And it's so fulfilling and so satisfying.
Yes. And
yeah.
And the cool part about that, it was just like, you could run the spectrum while self-discovery. And I had something a good friend of mine told me. And she was like, I showed her two pictures, one from me in 2018 and one me recently. She's like, that looks like a pair of pictures of a guy who's unpacking himself. And, it does take a while to unpack your own psyche, sexuality, and otherwise. And it's like, it's not like my sexual preferences change. It's what I define my own self-sexiness to be within myself. I'm still cis male. I say 90% straight. If you have to know, it's like, I love women, and that means a lot of things.
I mean, I feel like that's totally normal, and so many people are on the same page as that, and I think that's awesome because
the funny part is
you're
like,
not putting yourself in a box, which I feel like for a lot of cis men, that's hard to do. It's hard to like accept that part of yourself. So I feel like doing that work to get there is so important, and sometimes that's a therapist. Yeah. Sometimes that's like doing a lot of self-care. Sometimes that's looking inward, journaling, whatever that looks for you. But doing that self-work, I think it will just lead to a much more fulfilling lifestyle if that's something you want, you know?
And it is, and it has been, you know. And the thing is, as I discovered that, people will put somewhat labels on it, and some of those labels, good, bad, or ugly, will start to clash. Like, I've been told by some women, where like, you're mostly straight, and then I've been told by some people, it's like, oh, it's just not cis women you're attracted to? Oh, you must be pan. And I'm like, well, I said 90% for that reason. It's whatever you label it is whatever you label it. It doesn't change how I feel and how I operate. It just it just puts an overarching label on a set of boundaries and preferences I have. It doesn't change them. It's just like, hey, this is what it is.
And sex and sexuality is so fluid and ever changing, and that's so great about being a human.
Yeah, fluid and individualistic sometimes too.
Yeah, it's totally. I mean, I knew someone who was queer their whole life, and then they got married in like a very like heteronormative marriage, you know, from the outside looking in. Yeah. And that, you know, that's awesome. Like, it's just so awesome that we don't have to limit ourselves into these like rigid like boxes that society does kind of try to put us into. And we can go outside of that and have it be accepted and beautiful. And for me, I love to express that side of me through cosplay and through my pole dance.
Exactly. I love expressing through cosplay, through
me too.
Any sort of self-empowerment activity, whether it's fitness, martial arts, Switch.
And honestly though, a lot of people find sex empowerment too, especially you hear that very much in the BDSM community.
Exactly. I'll tell you this, just to get you warmed up for a bonus round, because we went through a lot today, and I'm gonna have a 2-hour episode, and I don't care.
Sorry,
not sorry, but I gotta warm up your cringe. I'm gonna talk about Past Me just to warm up your cringe, because then we'll segue into.
Oh no! I don't want to roast you, Troy. Don't make me roast you.
Oh no! Let's roast 2018 Troy together.
Okay.
So, 2018 Troy, had a very flexible boundary when it came to dating monogamy. Because of all his boys, he's like, well, it's just monogamy. It's monogamy or you cheat. Take your pick on what. So here I was back in the day being a total fuckboy of like, well, if I'm not tied down to a relationship, I'm just going to make sure every sexual partner don't know the other person. And I'm like, what a player.
Yeah.
What a fuckboy. I start cringing. And it's like, as long as they don't ask,
not great.
I don't tell.
Well,
that would... Go ahead.
Here's my take on that, if you want to hear my take on it.
Please, let's roast this kid.
Is that I don't think, unless you are committed to someone monogamously, and as long as all the sex you're having is consensual and safe, and by safe I mean using a condom to protect against STIs, and unwanted pregnancies.
I don't like the word D's. I like eyes. Don't ask me why. I like the word STI.
No, I mean, language matters, and I think STD has become such a scary term, and it's such a blanket term that's often incorrect.
Yeah.
So STI, sexually transmitted infections, is much more accurate.
Yep.
So as long as you're doing that, I mean, honestly, I think what's important in this scenario is that you need to communicate to your partners that you're sleeping with that I am like sleeping with other people. And so they can consent fully to the situation too. But I don't think necessarily you need to like give them all the gritty details. I don't think you need to be like this person, this person, this person. I think, just for their safety and their ability to consent to know who they are having sex with. Yeah. It's just a matter of being like, I am sleeping with other people. I'm not committed to anyone right now, and I just want to have a good time, and that's all the relationship I'm looking for right now.
Fuckboy Troy.
Are you doing that?
Fuckboy Troy at the day was not. He was safe. That's the good thing you can say about him. But one thing you can't say good about him is that he always made sure to side skirt the yes and no. Am I?
Troy.
Fuckboy said.
Troy, you dumb motherfucker.
Yes.
Now I have to roast you.
Roast that motherfucker. Okay. Here's 2023 Troy. I'm in an open relationship with my girlfriend Alex. We literally communicate everything of everything of what we do.
I love that.
She knows every person I've slept with. She knows every person I was attracted to. She knows every person that I would want to sleep with. I know every dude and girl she would want to sleep with. The 2018 Troy and all his friends, if they're watching this right now and they did
They can
not.
suck my dick. Sorry.
What? Go for it. So, actually, no, it depends on the person. Again, 90% straight. But I'll tell you this: the crew behind 2018 Troy, if they're watching, they would be like, "What? How are you feel? How do you feel secure in a relationship where your girl's fucking other dudes?" And I'm like, "Well, she told me. Well,
You're like,
we give each
she
other.
has fucked other dudes.
She has fucked other
and
dudes. We have
that's her
unpacked it.
business.
That's her business. We've unpacked it between the two of us of like, okay, if I'm feeling jealousy, here's why. Let's unpack it and deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh, on the
that's
flip side,
huge.
yeah. And on the flip side, I tell her who I'm attracted to, who I've had a chance with, or who I've had, or who's about to have a chance with. She knew who I was about to bang, which the 2018 crew would be like, the fuck.
But here's my question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that brings you closer with your primary partner?
In many
Because
ways,
you have
yes.
you have this openness and this trust because you're being respectful and transparent of everything you're doing. And to compare that to 2018, Troy, like that shows so much growth. And like that, that's the goal of our podcast.
Yes, here we are. So, not only is I a burgeoning, emerging podcaster, I was inspired by two podcasters, and I already had the first inspiration on here. The crew at 4 Geeks by Geeks. They were my first inspiration.
I love those guys. Yeah. They're amazing, and they have such fun content. Everyone should go follow them.
Shout out to Bozer, T, and the other crew at 4 Geeks by Geeks.
Yes.
Past and present, love you all. You're my first inspiration. Second inspiration was you, and I'm not saying that just to kiss your ass. I'm saying that
you can say it to kiss my ass. That's fine. That's fine.
With that said, you have a podcast. What is a TLDR about it? Just for anyone who doesn't know.
So the premise of our podcast is to read unsolicited DMs over the internet. Sometimes it could be an email or a text message. And really we talk about sex and sexuality, lifestyle, and the patriarchy. But because the idea stemmed from reading unsolicited DMs from cishet men to cishet women, we call it hate mail. And that's spelled HATEMALE.
Oops. God,
Oopsie.
the Andrew Tate fanboys will be all over that shit.
Oh yeah, they love it, right? They're totally a group of people who could take criticism and look inward.
Well, with that said, now I'm going to give you a few rapid fire questions to the hate mail host, Nora Jane. And I need you to respond as quick as possible, first thought in your head. All right?
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I hope so.
Okay. First off, just out of context, so there's our messages directly sent through what channels? Is it email? Was it dating apps? Was it social media?
Dating apps, it pretty much everything, but it's a whole broad spectrum where we have interviews. We interview a sex worker. We interview someone living with an STI. We interview someone who's a part of the kink community. So it's just kind of an all-encompassing sex and sexuality and like under the patriarchy. And it's kind of very feminist heavy. So it kind of was designed for the girls, but our listenership is pretty split down the binary. And it's really cool to see. But the meat and potatoes of it is reading unsolicited DMs from guys. But we get into it. Yeah, we do study sessions where we go on deep dives on stuff like internalized misogyny. Like we talk about friendships between men and women and the differences.
Yep.
I went on a deep dive on The Last of Us because it's my podcast.
Yeah, fuck off, y'all.
So that's what's so fun about having a small little show that you produce is we can kind of make the rules. But the whole thing is kind of feminism and life under the patriarchy.
Perfect. Okay, under the patriarchy, I'm going to rapid fire you questions from under the patriarchy. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. Worst first line someone gave you in DMs?
Want to see my dick?
Worst assumption, okay, first off, we are a gender inclusive podcast here at Heroes Forge, but this is just too easy of a question. Worst assumption men make about women, all inclusive, present tense.
Oh, that women are nothing but a bunch of dumb a bunch of dumb sluts because she won't suck my dick.
Boom.
Or you need to be young and fertile.
Young and fertile, not just young.
Yeah, you gotta pump out babies, and you gotta be like questionably 18. That's what the boys seem to want per the podcast.
So it's not just a breeding kink, but it's a breeding literal kink.
I think
breed literally.
You know what? You got to listen to the podcast. You'll see. Listen to the podcast and we'll talk about it.
All right. Oh God, I don't want to move on from that question then, man. Jeez, can't get down the rabbit hole. Back out. Okay, next one.
Back up.
Biggest red flag in a dating app picture.
Oh, there was this one dude who he took a picture with a girl, like a hot girlfriend, and he was like holding her around her neck like this. And her face was blurred, and it was like his dating app profile was him like you know how you put your arm around your buddy's neck? So that was him just gripping her throat. Like he was like coming over behind her and like grabbing her throat. So, I was fucked up from that one. It was so weird, but his profile was all about how he can control you and how he wants to control you. So it kind of was on brand for him.
So he's trying to go for Christian Grey and it came off serial killer.
Yeah. Yeah, he thought he really had something.
50 Shades of bullshit.
50 Shades of toxic bullshit.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well, let's go into that. Biggest red flag in a dating app description.
Dating app description. Anything that says business mogul.
Oh, God.
Though I feel like if a man is saying he's a business mogul, I just think you should be a little suspicious of that. Because usually the ones who are or if they say self-made, I don't know. I'm not saying that's inherently a red flag. I am saying keep your guard up.
They're either probably broke, drug dealers, or they got their money illegally if they have any at all.
I think they're broke and they're looking for a girlfriend and a mother in one person.
Oh, that's a specificity.
But not in the fun way. Not in the fun way. In the I want you to take care of me in every facet way.
So not an MAMI, but an MOHTER, please.
Yeah, as in I want you to do all my laundry and cook me dinner every night. But
sense.
Also have sex with me whenever I want.
You are my living laundromat and fleshlight.
Yep. 100%.
100%. All right, and this is going to be the deep question. Okay, not rapid fire, here's the deep one. What's the best lesson people can learn from these guys in all their mistakes? What is the one takeaway lesson from all the hate mail? And maybe that's a really, really broad question to ask. Like, what's the one thing fellas can learn from the amount of hate mail you go through? What would that be?
I think I would like to counter your question with the goal of our podcast is not so much what can men take away from it, but what are the tools that people can use to spot red flags and to see a problematic person coming from a mile away, because abusers are sneaky. Gaslighting and love bombing is super sneaky, and I think we are very conditioned to say yes, please, and thank you, and be very polite and not stand up for ourselves because that's unladylike. So if we can help just anybody see some red flags and hopefully prevent them from getting in a dangerous situation or an unhealthy situation and save them a lot of peace and to give themselves a little bit of space and patience and self-love, that's what we want to do.
If I could devil's advocate that, is it more of a perspective of protection more so than, hey, let's try to change the patriarchy? Do you think maybe it's just maybe is it because it's not a easier, I don't want to say easier path to take, but a more important path to take of protecting before trying to change the established patriarchy? Is it more of like you'd rather just protect our own first?
I think it's a little bit of that. I think it's a little bit, I wish I had seen some of these red flags. I think that it can get so tricky when you really want someone to be this person who you think they are. But also, you know, if you're a guy looking at it, it's basically a breakdown of exactly what not to do when you're trying to talk to someone.
So to answer my question, it's a big question with a big answer.
Yeah, it's kind of, this is how don't be a dick.
Yeah, this is how you don't be a dick.
It's really easy. It's really easy to not be a dick.
Yeah. Let you count the ways.
Here's all the ways.
That literally answered my question. Is like,
perfect.
Don't be a dick. Here's how not to. Boom.
Yep.
There it is.
Boom.
So
don't be a dick.
We kill two birds with one stone. The bigger theme of the podcast and the big lesson guys can learn: don't be a dick.
Yes. Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Hashtag that shit. So we went nearly 2 hours, baby.
Wow. Well, we did cover a lot.
Yeah.
We did cover a lot. And I mean, that tumor story, she's a doozy.
Yeah, that was an
But she has, It has a very happy ending.
Yes, that was
so.
an epic tale. If I have to fucking turn this into a trilogy, I just might. I'll let the cat boys
And that
sort
was
that
a
out.
short version.
Yep.
That was a short version, you know?
That. I can imagine that. We streamlined the shit out of that. The Catboy might have to make this a trilogy of episodes. But with that said, to drop the mic, where can the geek world find you, Nora?
So if you're interested in our podcast, we're at Hate Mail Podcast on everything, and it is co-hosted by me and my best friend Ellen. If you are interested in following me and my pole dance / cosplay journey, you can follow my Instagram, which is at IvyEyes. I also have a TikTok where I just post pole dancing stuff, and that one is at Nora Jane Poles.
Excellent, Nora. This was every bit of awesome as I could have imagined.
This was so much fun. Thank you for having me on. I love to talk about this stuff. I love to talk about pole dance, and listen, I'll scream my tumor story to anyone who wants to listen to it because it is wild, but it's kind of fun to tell.
That was epic. That was literally epic.
We will
have to bring you back again to talk DC, talk fuckboys, talk.
Oh my God!
Comics.
Yes. We'll start our Justice League Unlimited rewatch podcast.
You know what? At least we can make it like a trilogy episode. Even if we don't make a full bore podcast about it, we'll make it like a trilogy episode of like.
We'll talk about like our top 3, and that includes the Justice League series and the Justice League Unlimited series. We'll pick our top 3 episodes.
Yes. Oh God. Yes. That'll actually give me time to play catch up on at least the limited. I
know it's a perfect excuse.
Oh God. Yes. All right. Excellent. But perfect. This was awesome. Again, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me, Troy. I love what you do, and I love everything that you are doing with Heroes Forge, and I'm so proud of you. You've really made such big strides with this, and I'm just so happy I got to be a part of it in some tiny little way.
And there it was, a 2-part epic with Nora Jane, IvyEyes. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, the fuck's wrong with you? I'm just kidding. I don't judge here. If you like doing things backwards like I do, go ahead, hit that. See, backwards. Hit that episode. We'll see you there, and then feel free to come back to this one. Talk to you then.